The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Really excited. It's Thursday and we've got a big show for you today. We've had, some of our regulars, I've been off and some of our regulars have had to be other places, but we have a packed show for you today. I got count them, three doctors for you. We are crazy with BCBAs today. So if you've got questions and you need them answered, start writing in on the live feature right now because, and we're going to get to some of the ones that we haven't been able to cover in the last couple of days, because I've got doctors for you today. I love that. Experts, we need answers, right? Or even more questions. That's what this whole show is about. We look at autism from a 360-degree perspective. We're hoping to give you the answers and questions that you need to go and find more answers and questions, because progress is what it's all about. Whether you're a parent, teacher, practitioner, or you yourself are on the autism spectrum, we want to help you to get to that progress, right? So the whole show is meant to be interactive. Emily's going to start to show you some of the different ways that you can interact with us here and be in touch with us. While she does that, I'll remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, there's a lot to do. You can check out the blog, you can sign up for the newsletter, or you can watch the live show or the most recently recorded live show just by clicking on the little triangle that is on the computer screen, and it will immediately start up. Now, to the side of the computer screen, there's a series of white boxes that tell you the question that we're answering right now, and if there's nothing in that box, it might be that we're answering something that wasn't in the live feature, like on Facebook or Twitter, however you guys got a hold of us, through email. Many different ways of getting a hold of us. But below that box is a place for your questions. You put your cursor there, you start typing, you hit enter, and it shows up here on my screen after a slight lag. But it's free. There is no login. Nobody's asking for your credit card or even your name. It's totally anonymous, which I love. Now, it doesn't have to be anonymous. If you want us to get back to us, if you want to give us some personal information, like how to get back in touch with you, you absolutely can. We will keep that private and we won't share that with the audience at home, but it's okay to not include that. It just means that the only place we can answer your question so that you can find it is during the show. And that's perfectly okay. I did want to take just 1 second at the top of the show because I kept saying we were going to get to it, and then we never did. Lots of questions came in yesterday about who do we contact when we want something from CARD. So I just want to give a little refresher course because we're closely aligned with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and that's for a very good reason, because my son was treated at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Don't even get me started. It's Thursday and I'm emotional. But my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, right after his third birthday, like a week or two after. We started intensive ABA with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And look, not to put too fine of a point on it, but they gave me back my child, right? That's the beginning and the end of the sentence right there. They gave me back my child. Was it hard work? Yes. Was it worth it? Oh, yes. The most worthwhile thing that I would say that our family ever participated in. Truthfully, I have a very happy, very verbal little boy, all individuals on the spectrum have different outcomes, right? But we want to give them their best chance. And we know that quality ABA is something that it's there and can be used to create progress. It does create progress no matter where an individual is on the spectrum, no matter what their age is, no matter what their skill set is, what their ability is. ABA can help them to make progress. Quality ABA. And I got my quality ABA at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, so I do recommend them wholeheartedly, and I don't even apologize for that. Of course, there are other quality ABA providers that are out there. Please don't mistake when we talk about CARD, and you'll hear the CARD people say there are lots of lovely quality ABA providers out there. It's just when I'm talking about, I recommend CARD first and foremost, and suggest that you look at CARD first, because I know that you're going to have a good experience, and because there are more offices in more places, and if you don't live within 30 to 50 miles of an office, they have something called remote services that they will come to wherever you are. And if you can't do that, then they have ways for you to be able to learn the techniques that you need to learn so that you can do this intervention yourself. They've got us covered. Thank goodness, right? But you need to know that if you wanted to start services with CARD, one of the first things I encourage people to do is go to the CARD website, centerforautism.com, go to the locations tab, and they list all the different offices. I've actually, just this morning, asked them to list them a little bit different. I want them listed by states because some of us have been talking, some of you have written in, and I've been trying to hook you up with the closest office, and it doesn't list it by state, it lists it by the name of the office. So that's going to be changing. But right now you can see what the zip code is. You can see the name of the city that it's in. So it gives you a little bit of, but very soon it'll be listed by the state. In any case, take a look and see if there's something that looks familiar or if a zip code looks familiar to you right now. If it does, I know that the instinct is to click on the little interactive tab for that office and call that office. You can, but it's not the real way to get the progress to get started at that office. If you call that office, you're going to be dealing with people who can't help you to get started as a CARD client. So look and see if there's an office near you, and then you want to call the 800 number. And doesn't matter which office you're looking at, but call the 800 number, and they will fast track you for an intake so that you can start with that office. It's actually much quicker. I know it feels like, oh, I'm removing myself a little from the process. It's the way to do it. It's the quick way to do it. So you want to call the 800 number that's listed all over the website, and perhaps Emily can put that up for us. But that's what you want to do if you're looking for services in the home or in a center-based system. Now, if you look at that list and you see that there isn't an office that's within 50 miles of you, if you're within 50 miles, do the 800 number. If you're outside the 50 miles, then you're looking at remote services. Then you want to talk to remote services. And we were on with Dr. Grandpichet yesterday, and she was saying John Galley is the person who is the head of remote services. You can contact him at J.Galley, Galle, at centerforautism.com. J.Galley, Galle, at centerforautism.com. There's also a remote services tab that will lead you to all of that as well, but that's the quick way to do that. I know some of you have been calling the offices directly to do that, and it will be an exercise in frustration for you and for them. So that's what I want to encourage you to do, is to call, depending on which thing that you need, you'll have an easier experience of that. And of course, if remote services is outside the realm of what you can do because you don't have funding, and there are many of you who are out there that is the case, I want to encourage you to sign up for your free trial of skillsforautism.com. Make sure that you are doing that assessment, working on the assessment. It will be so helpful to you in so many ways. And then we really want to encourage you to go to ibehavioraltraining.com to be able to learn the techniques so that you can implement the curriculum that is skills. Lots of people are doing that because you have to have a way. Right? You have to have a way to get to the good stuff, and that comes with that quality ABA. Doesn't matter if your child is 2 and nonverbal, your child is 38, right? And they need some social skills. Or it's the flip. You've got a 2-year-old who's very verbal but needs some help with some other skills, and you have a 38-year-old who's nonverbal, right? Anything in between and older than that. All of these skills are going to help them to create progress. And you individualize it. There's no one size fits all. All right. Having said all that, I just wanted to get that out at the top of the show. I like to remind you guys that I'm not an expert in autism. As I mentioned, I'm a parent and I'm a former teacher. So I have a real interest in the education of both my child and all of our kids. How do we help them to make the progress that they get to make, that they have owed to them, that they deserve? So that's why I'm here. I have a lot to pay forward. Privileged to be here, but don't mistake me for an expert. But I do have experts for you. I keep trying to load the thing. It's not going to load for me. Okay. We like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. Yes, the jargon du jour, when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to make sense out of it for you. This journey is so intensive to begin with, and when you throw in a bunch of terms that you have no earthly idea what they mean, it's frustrating, right? But then compound it when you look up the definition, what you get often is more jargon. Oh, heaven save me. Right? Because you feel like you have literally fallen down a well. We can't have that. And I love one of our guests later on, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is going to be with us again today. Yay! And I love whenever I get overwhelmed and say, you know, how are we going to do this when we talk about something? And he says, when we're talking about an intervention, and I go, oh my gosh, there's so many steps. How are we going to do that? And he says, how do we eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Same thing with the jargon. One bite at a time. One word, one phrase. We start to get an understanding of it. We take it a little bit at a time and we'll get there, right? So our term today is, we talked a little bit the other day about mass trials, right? If you missed that, make sure you go back and watch Tuesday because it'll make much more sense. So today we're talking about random rotation. And these terms, I don't know why. This sounds like the name of a ride in an amusement park for me. The random rotation. Everybody step on the ride and see where it lets you off. Okay, but our actual definition for random rotation as it pertains to autism, it's a procedure used during discriminative training in which the target is interspersed randomly with other targets. Often the other targets have been previously mastered. In fact, that's usually the case. So we talked the other day about, well, let's move on to our actual definition and then we'll get into this. So you're randomly switching between the behavior you're teaching the current target and other behavior responses that the child already knows. Okay, so we talked about this on Tuesday, that if I'm doing mass trialing and I'm trying to teach the child that this is a pen, and maybe I'm teaching it receptively, so I say, touch the pen. Because I want to know that the child is hearing the term pen and that they, if I say touch the pen, that they know to touch the pen. And I start out in the beginning with errorless learning, that I only have a pen there and nothing else, and I say touch the pen, and I'll even help the child to touch it, and I'll go, yay, that's the pen, good job, and give them substantive rewards that mean something to me. Okay, so in the beginning, errorless learning, there's nothing else there. Then as I'm mass trialing it, all I'm teaching is the pen, and I'm not going to intersperse it with other targets, with other things that I'm trying to teach them. I'm just going to deal with the pen. That's the mass trial. I say, touch the pen, they touch the pen, yay, touch the pen. And it sounds ridiculous when somebody's mass trialing. You just go, really? Are we not teaching anything else? But it gets the job started, because the child gets infinite opportunities, they're getting it right, they're getting the reinforcement, and they're really starting to get it. But have I really, if all I do is mass trial, have I really taught that this is the pen? Have I really taught them to discriminate the difference between a pen and a mouse? Because for all I know, the child is hearing touch the womp womp, right? And they do, and we go, yay, but it really doesn't mean anything to them that it's a pen, and I need for them to discriminate between the pen and the mouse. So they've got the pen, they're doing it, we've mastered this, so I put the pen to the side. Now I'm going to mass trial the mouse. right? And I'm going to say this, touch the mouse. Child touches the mouse. Yay, wonderful. So at some point, though, I've got to teach the difference between the pen and the mouse. This is when I start random rotation. So I'll put these two things out. And by the way, at some point, I do have distractors when I'm teaching the pen. I might have, I don't think you can really see my desktop, so I'm going to hold them up. So I've got, at some point when I'm teaching the pen, I've got the pen out, I've got the mouse out, and I've got this out, and I'm saying touch the pen. So the child touches the pen, and they get rewarded. And I'll switch them around always so that if they're not in the same place, then I'll say touch the pen, right? These are called the distractors. But when I do random rotation, I'm going to change the question that I'm asking. So I might say touch the mouse. The child touches the mouse. Yay! And I switch the order all around. And I might say touch the mouse, and the child touches the mouse. Yay! I switch them around and I say touch the pen. And then the child touches the pen. A lot of times what happens is the child touches the mouse, right? And I'll give it a gentle, nope, here's the pen, touch the pen, and I'll help them touch the pen. Yay, touch the pen. So I'm teaching them the difference between a pen and a mouse. Now, obviously, a pen and a mouse are not the things we start with, right? It's usually other things, but this is what's on my desktop. So random rotation is when you're changing up what the target is that you want them to do. In this case, it was touch the, right? But it might be sit down, or it might be add 4 plus 4, or, any one of the things that I could possibly ask a child to do, and I'm changing it up. That's random rotation. And what it does is helps to determine that the child can discriminate between the things we're asking them to do so that they really learn it, right? Then after random rotation, we're going to take and put these into real life circumstances, right? So that we're not only ever teaching it in this manner, but this is what gets the ball rolling. This is a really important component of a lot of teaching, this discriminate trial teaching that makes it so we create an environment in which the child has the ultimate opportunity to begin to learn something. But remember, we're not done yet. These are just the first couple of steps in a many-step process to where the child completely gets it on their own. It's fascinating to watch. I encourage you to check out the A Word because they'll show how they implement that. And definitely, if this interests you and you go, okay, I need to know more, IBT, behavioral training, go there, learn it, and then go to skills, and you'll find all the lessons about which thing do I teach, when do I teach, touch the pen, what else do I have to teach in this series of things so that the child really begins to understand. And if you're still lost, it's okay, because in just a few minutes, we're going to have a guest who's going to help us to understand some of the different things that we teach. Wonderful, wonderful guest. Okay, so moving on. I'm rushing because I want to get our guests in. Moving on, we always have a question of the day for you. We hope that you'll take a second to answer on Facebook, and we'll try to find time later on to check in with the things that you guys have written. We asked you guys on Tuesday what really makes you mad. Today we want to know, what's the most important part of your day? The most important part of your day. And I was thinking about this morning. I think that, honestly, one of the most important parts, I think it's the beginning and the end for me. It's so important to me that I get a good start in the morning. It sets a tone, and that my son gets a good start in the morning. And we have a set of rituals in the morning that it's taken us a little while, and from time to time it has to change because his needs change. But we have a ritual right now that is luscious to me. It's just absolutely luscious, and he loves it. We try to keep it flexible and pliable so that it's not, if this doesn't happen, then everything comes apart. But that we set up an expectation to send a child happily off to school, so that he's ready to learn and that he feels like he's amazing and his self-esteem is high, and I see that throughout the day. Now, as I said, we've had bumpy times, and I'm sure we'll have bumpy times again, but right now we're in a sweet spot. When you get into sweet spots, you gotta appreciate it, right? So morning's so important to me, but I have to be honest that how we end the day is often as important. I don't know how your kids are, but my child, if he goes to bed upset about something, he can go to sleep, and he will go to sleep, and he will wake up, and the very first thing that comes out of his mouth is the thing he was upset about when he went to sleep. So it's really important to me that we start the day in a good way and we end the day in a good way, and ending the day in a good way it leads to starting the day in a good day. And again, sweet spot, we've gone back to our ritual. I shied away from it for a while, but we've gone back to our ritual of me reading to him at night and him reading with me. And it just leads to the best conversations. It just leads to the best conversations. I can't even tell you how lucky I am. And I know it. And I want you to know that I know it. But it's delightful. And I also want you to know that were lots of years that I sat with him and read when I didn't know if it would lead to the conversations. So if you're not at the point where you're having the conversations, I still encourage you to read. It adds so much. And I know that there are some of you who think, I don't know what my child is getting out of it. I still think that sometimes. I still will be reading him something and think, I don't know. And I stop and ask questions to see if he's comprehending right, but I don't know if he's getting all of it. And then he'll say something 2 weeks later and it just blows my mind, and his vocabulary is it's reading, and it sets us both up for a relaxation period and a bonding period. So for me, it's the start and the end of the day. So important, because if those two things are right, everything in between tends to be luscious and divine. And remember that there were a lot of years, multiple years, where that was not my case. So if you're not in that spot yet, hang on, do what you can today, stick with us, ask questions, but all of our kids can make progress, right? They're all going to end up in different places, but all of our kids can make progress. If you're in a tough spot today, know that you don't have to be there forever. Okay, so to that end, we always have a topic that we share for the week and that we focus on, and I think this is such a good topic this week. It's about focusing on what truly matters. It's so easy to get caught up in all the things that aren't happening and not focus on the things that are happening, and it's so easy to get caught up in other people's expectations of what should be. I'm going to hopefully not make somebody mad, but a dear friend of our show that we just love so much, Liz Becker, fabulous author. You need to check out her blog, The World According to Matt, about her journey with her son. And she's also got a book out that's coming out in hardcover, amazing book. And I always get the title wrong, but it's The World According to Matt, and I'm going to get it wrong. But it's about her journeys with her son, who is now 27 years old and living independently, completely living independently. And he is somebody that is classified as moderate to severe autism and nonverbal. And, I have to be honest with you that I love talking to Liz because she gives me so much hope, because in my understanding always before, if somebody was moderate to severe, we weren't going to get to the point where they lived independently, right? And Liz said, no, he wants to live independently, and so we're going to find the way. And it took her many years of daily practice and implementing all these things to the point where he could live independently. And he has a system set up around him so that if he needs help, that help will be available. But he lives in his own apartment, and they have daily contact with him. But it's kind of really amazing. And Liz was saying yesterday on her Facebook site, she was a little frustrated because the question that she gets asked by so many people that she'll say, Matt's living independently, and they say, so is he working a job? And she was expressing on her Facebook, why is that always the measure of success? Why is that what people want to know? Is he working a job, as if that's the be all end all? Isn't it enough that he's living alone? And she kind of was putting that out there to all of us. And I wrote back and I said, I'm sorry, but this is because you redefined severe to moderate to severe for us. I would not have thought he could live alone. And so if he can now live alone, then I want to know what else is possible. I want to know what else can you accomplish, what else can be done. It doesn't mean, that it isn't important what he's done. It's huge. It's the biggest success in the world, right? But I do want to know, okay, so if that can be done, what else can we do? Is it possible? Is it necessary for him to work a job in order to be successful? No. But is it possible? Is it possible? So we were telling her last night, it's because you're so awesome that we want to know more. We want to know more. But if we focus on what matters is what makes Matt happy, and what Matt wanted was to live independently. And they found the way to do that. And everybody else's idea about, should he or shouldn't he be working towards having a job, if that's not what matters to Matt, then I don't know that matters to anybody, right? So easy to get caught up in other people's expectations of what should or shouldn't happen, right? But let's focus on what matters as much as we can. And for me, and I know for a lot of you, what matters is making progress. Making progress. We don't know what the outcome is going to be. And as we were saying yesterday with Nancy Jackson, there's no arrival in the autism journey. It's not like, okay, we've now made it to exit 24. We're here. We're done. We're all making progress, all human beings on and off the spectrum. So we continue trusting and knowing that where we're going is good, but there is no arrival. And that's okay. All right. So that's what we're talking about today and every day this week, focusing on what matters. So are you ready for the guests? I told you 3 doctors. Pretty incredible. So first, we're going to start out with real progress with Dr. Adel. Dr. Adel Najdowski is going to be here with us talking about the verbal operants. Yeah, I know, more jargon, but you'll love it. You actually will love it. And then we are going to have Tom Szabo. I hope I've said that correctly because I was saying it wrong earlier this morning. He's from FIT, Florida Institute of Technology. He's going to talk to us about the hybrid master's program in professional behavior analysis. I want to know what that is, and I think we all want to know what that is. And then, of course, we end the day with the fabulous Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. He is going to be here with us talking about research. One of the most talked about research studies having to do with autism that helps us to understand perspective taking. I'm talking about the Sally Ann test. If you've heard about this and said, I don't quite get it, you're going to want to have Dr. Tarbox talk about it because he puts it in a way that we can all understand it. And we'll talk about why it was so landmark and what it has to do with our kids today. Absolutely relating it back to today, which is what he's really good at. And of course, we're going to take your questions. I do want to give a shout out, Mike Hipple. I'm looking to see. Mike wrote in, Mike is one of our favorite guests on the show, and he watches frequently and chimes in, and we love that, Mike, when you chime in. And he wants to know how the science fair was yesterday. I don't really get to know. Like Jem told me a little bit about it, but it was just the setup yesterday. Tonight is open house, and we get to see all the things. So I will let you know on Tuesday how that all went. And my son does not have a Facebook yet. He is still 10, and so I'm not ready for that yet. So there's no Facebook yet. And then Mike also wants to know that there is open registration right now for AVA. It's an amazing communication device camp for ages 12 through 21, young adult, using a communication device. So if you have an individual who's using a communication device, he's recommending this camp. It is at the University of Whitewater, 5-day camp through a Sunday through Friday, the first week in August this year. All levels of abilities are welcome. So again, that is the AVA camp, and it's at the University of Whitewater. Mike, if you're watching, tell us what website we would need to go to register, okay? We are going to take a break, and we're going to be back with real progress with Dr. Adel. Stick with us.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Lisa Ackerman with TACA. We're here with the TACA Facts, the most common questions in the autism journey, real-life questions and answers for your family. Oh boy, this one gets me in trouble. I get this question probably at least a dozen times a week, but how do I get my significant other on board? whether it's having ABA done in your home, 5 days a week, speech therapy, or even biomedical intervention. I'm talking to you as a parent. It happened to me in the autism journey 3 years after diagnosis. I felt like I'd been through a war zone. I don't have pictures. I don't remember those 3 years. It was awful, and I'm surprised my husband and I made it out of that war zone. So here's some of the tips that helped me get through those 3 years and made it a better marriage, because he's the one I want to be with. First thing you need to do, and this goes for dudes and chicks, replace all the bathroom reading material. Now, whether you just had an independent evaluation with a neuropsychologist, or you just went to your doctor, your MAPS doctor, to help your child get through some serious medical issues, replace the labs, replace the neuropsych eval, and put that all in the bathroom. That's where we do our best reading and thinking, after all. It's one of the most simplistic things that you can do, but literally replace all the bathroom reading material. 2, very important that twice a year you have a meeting and you schedule it with your spouse to say, we're going to do the next 6 months of planning, whether it's just create a quick list, identify the issues or the self-stimulatory behavior or the things that you need to do to help your child with autism make the project. Let me give you an example. We created the Man Project. My son was becoming a teenager, and we found ourselves living a little bit in a rut, babying him a little too much. So what we did was we created a Man Project, and we identified a list of the skills and the things that we wanted my son or our son to learn. We agreed to it, and then we came up with a plan that we could activate over the next 6 months. And my next favorite, don't forget to have sex with your spouse. Often you will feel disconnected with the person that you love. And if you're not connected with them, you're not connected with them in that way. You're not connecting with them in your autism journey. So my husband laughs, he calls me Dr. Ruth, so I'm giving you a coupon to please just go have sex with your spouse. That will help move things along, but also make it a little more cohesive in a house of chaos, living with autism. So hi, this is Lisa signing out as Dr. Ruth. No, I'm just kidding. Lisa Ackerman with Taka, and we'll talk to you at the next Taka Facts.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to this segment which we call Real Progress with Dr. Adel. Dr. Adel Najdowski is here with us, and if you watch the show at all, you know that I adore this woman and that I always say she has made me a better parent. And can I tell you that becomes more clear to me every day. It honestly does, because I've been taking some time and speaking with different offices around the country with different therapists and talking about, what happens and giving them the parent's perspective. Mm-hmm. And I'm remembering how little I knew when I was a parent doing therapy. And people think that I know so much now, and I always have to say to them, but I didn't learn that from therapy. I learned that from Dr. Najdowski, because you taught me, and I was thinking about this morning, that I owe everyone, I've been saying for a while, and I'm working on it now, the book that I'm going to write, Mornings with Dr. Adel, when Dr. Adel Najdowski taught me all these things, because every parent should have access to what you taught me.
Well, I think you're giving me way too much credit. You actually did a lot of the work on your own, and I was just there to answer questions.
But that's huge. I mean, that's really what everybody sort of needs. And I try as much as I can on the show to say to people, ask questions, and our experts will answer them, because I know how powerful it can be and how life-changing it can be. And you guys that are watching are so much better informed than I was when I was doing therapy. And I think the more we do that, the more we'll accomplish. We've really been talking about how important parents are on the team. So
awesome.
It's just working towards things getting better. But and if you watch the show, you know that Dr. Najdowski was one of the co-creators of Skills, and you know that I'm all about skills. just love skills. I have an IEP tomorrow, and so I've been in my skills account.
Nice.
Logging some time in my skills account. But in any case, Dr. Adel Najdowski is a true expert in the field of autism and works with individuals who are on the autism spectrum. So we love to have her here answering your questions and talking about specific topics. This week, I've asked her to give us a rundown, a refresher, if you will, and an intro, the 101 on the verbal operants. So first of all, what on earth does the term verbal operant? I still don't know. I don't really get what an operant is.
Operant is just learned behavior.
So why don't we just say that? So why don't we say verbal learned behavior?
Because in behavior analysis, it's a science, and if we use specific words that mean specific things, we can be more precise.
Yes, and that is it.
It's
Jargon.
really done that way so that everyone, when they talk, we know they're talking about the exact same thing.
Okay, and that does make sense.
Because it's learned behavior through the history of reinforcement. So that's what operant conditioning is. And so verbal operants are just verbal responses that have been conditioned through that. So
it's how we teach language, the verbal operants.
Yeah, so they're just different functions of language. The idea comes from the fact that Skinner's the one who actually wrote about this in his 1957 book, Verbal Behavior, and he was making a case that language has different functions. So it's not just learning the meaning of words. So if I were to teach you the word apple, then after that, I can't necessarily expect you to use it in all these different ways. So I can't expect you to necessarily request an apple when you're actually hungry to be able to talk about it in conversation or to label one, for example. So he early on kind of divided language up into different functional uses, and then he named each one a different verbal operant type. And so there's like 7 different verbal operants, but there's 4 main ones that we are focused on in ABA intervention.
And so am I putting too fine of a point on it to say this is the way in which we with precision teach language to people who haven't learned it in the organic way? This is the way we go about it.
I wouldn't use the word precision teach just because that in itself is a technical term in our field.
That's a different jargon.
Precision teaching.
Okay, but it's really effective way because it's broken down already for us, so we can follow a roadmap to say this is the way I'm going to teach this, and it's successful.
It's basically a different approach to teaching language than what had previously been done. So previously what had been done is that people focused on teaching what they called receptive language and expressive language.
Okay.
And so receptive was listening skills.
Right.
Expressive was actually saying something, or you could communicate through other means too if you weren't vocal, like writing or through a picture card or something, but you're expressing something, versus in receptive, you're listening to somebody and following directions, basically.
And those are important aspects of learning language, but if all we ever learned was the expressive and the receptive, we would probably find ourselves not being effective at conversation. Am I right?
Right. So I'm going to use this apple example since I already started with that. So receptive would be if I put out 3 objects and then I said, touch the apple. The idea here is the child listens, hears the word apple, scans the array, and then finds the one that matches. And then that's showing that they have the receptive skill, receptive identification of apple. For expressive, what they would normally do is in the presence of an apple, they would say, what is it? And then the child says, it's an apple or apple. And that's reinforced over time. And so then what would happen is they would say, well, we're done teaching it, they get it now.
Yeah.
So when I ask them to select an apple, they hear that and do it, and when they see one and are asked what it is, they can label it. So now they should be able to use that in speech, but that's the problem where the breakdown was occurring, is that they're not really using it in speech.
And this is what a lot of you write in and say, that you've got a child who's on the spectrum and, they can label things like crazy, but when are we going to get to the conversation? And you're frustrated with what's happening at the school because it seems like they've left off there.
Yeah, there's this weird assumption that you're going to teach him the meaning of the word apple, and now he'll just use that in conversation.
Right.
But that wasn't happening. So Skinner's analysis
I'm going to have you pause.
Got to that next step.
Okay. Because this is really important stuff, and we're going to have you pause there. But realize that what we're going to talk about next is the next leap, which leads to the conversation. So we're going to take a short break, come back with Dr. Najdowski, and for all of you who've been frustrated with the fact that your child is not getting to the conversation component, this is the good stuff. So stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Let's talk about step 6, live in gratitude and give back. Have you ever noticed that it's impossible to feel sorry for yourself when you focus on your blessings? I have an exercise for you. Take out 5 pennies. I want each penny to represent something you're thankful for today. Now, I bet not one of those pennies represented something material, but that every one of them represented someone you love or a moment you shared with that someone.
Go through life parched and empty, standing knee deep in a river and dying of thirst.
There's a song by Kathy Mattea called Standing Knee Deep in a River and Dying of Thirst. Sometimes we need to look at the river of blessings flowing underneath us, and then we see we're not so thirsty after all. Once you realize how fortunate you are, you can freely give back to others. And there's nothing that will make you feel more fortunate than giving to those less fortunate than you. So start your day with an attitude of gratitude. And until next time, keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with Dr. Adel Najdowski. She is one of the co-creators of Skills. And she is an expert in the field of autism. We're thrilled to have her here talking with us about the verbal operants. We said before the break that if we're truly trying to build language in an individual so that there can be meaningful back and forth conversation, it's a pretty intensive regimen that we're going to go through to teach all the different ways that a word can be used. We already talked a little bit about that. A lot of times parents will write in and say they've been taught how to label. They've been taught the expressive and the receptive lessons at a school, but they're not getting to the conversation and they're confused about why. Right. So we're thrilled that you're here to further the conversation, because if all you're teaching is the expressive and the receptive, it really is not going to set the child up for the most amount of success with conversation. Right. There are other things, the verbal operants, that we need to touch upon. So explain this to us.
All right, so there's 4 main ones. The first one is the most simple, and it's called the echoic. The word echo is in there, which should help you to remember it. It's basically verbal imitation. So it's when someone says a word, it's the when the child responds by imitating it. So if I were to say apple, then the child would also say apple.
And it's just imitation.
Just imitation.
Okay.
The next one is what we call a mand. And this one you can remember because if you think of the word command, you're making a request. Okay. And so manding is requesting. And so that would be if you were to use that word apple in a request. So it would be the idea that if the child was hungry and particularly wanted an apple, then they would go up to a caregiver and request an apple. So they'd say, apple, please, or I want an apple.
Yes.
But the thing is that just by teaching them the receptive identification and what is it, apple, kids were not going and making requests, even though they wanted an apple.
Yeah.
They wanted an apple, but they knew that was called an apple, supposedly, right? Because they were trained, but they were not going up and saying apple to request an apple.
We have to connect those dots.
Yes. And so then the next one is called a tact. And this is the ability to label basically things in the environment. And we do it all the time. And mostly we do it when something is novel or interesting. We're not just walking around going table, wall, and labeling things as we walk by. Instead, it's more like a clown enters the room and you go like, ha, look at the clown. Or an airplane that looks pretty interesting flies overhead or something like that. You point it out to someone. And so tacting is just labeling things. Yeah. And you want to get to where they're doing it spontaneously as well. So remember, the original expressive example I gave was you held up the apple, said, what is it? And the child said, apple. Yeah. But the problem with that is it's only under the control of you asking them, what is it? Yeah. And in real life, we are constantly, like, you could be driving in a new town and you see, like, a restaurant and you just, do you notice? You'll go, like, Subway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, we do.
And it's just normal. People do that all the time where they tact things in their environments. But it's all spontaneous for the most part.
And it's an important step in building the conversation.
And the reason why a lot of the time that people do it is to share an experience with someone. It's a shared experience. Yeah. So like young children come and show you things, and stuff like that. So, okay, the next one is the intraverbal. And the intraverbal is the conversational. This is the most difficult. This is where all they're responding to is a vocal stimulus. So you say something and then they say something back, and they're just responding to words. They're not responding anymore to the things they're seeing in their environment or some, want that they have or anything like that. It's more like if you were to ask, in the case of the apple, you would say like, name a fruit that's green and round or something like that, and they would come up with apple.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be able to do that if you only just taught them the receptive and the original expressive version of apple.
And utilizing these operants, these verbal operants, they're sort of the building blocks to be able to create conversation. Obviously, there's more lessons to build that conversation, but these are the building blocks that are so essential and have been shown to be very effective at creating that environment in which conversation happens.
So what we do is, when we try to teach all this, is we take each, word or whatever, and we make sure the child is trained to do all four. So they do the echoic, we do echoic training with the word, we do man training with the word, we do tact training. I mean, man training won't work unless it's something they actually like and want, but if it is, then it gets man training. We do the tact, which is labeling it, and then we do it in the conversational way. And for conversational, there's so many things you could do with apple, like I just said name a fruit, but it could be also, name something that grows on trees. There's so many different
What does
things.
Aunt Beth like
What's
to
your
eat?
favorite fruit? You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, endless, the possibilities.
But just getting them to be able to use their words in all these different functional ways. And when you do it, when you make sure to do that on everything you're teaching, and then what you start to get after a while is generalization, so then you don't have to teach every single one in all the different ways.
Amazing. It is absolutely, I've seen this in my home, and it's absolutely amazing to watch the way it plants the seed and it flourishes into a garden.
Yeah.
Truly, truly amazing. And of course, all of the lessons that go along with what Dr. Najdowski has been talking about are available on Skills. You can check that out at skillsforautism.com.
Yes, it's in the language curriculum. All of the lessons in the language curriculum are organized by the verbal operant types. So if you do go in there, you'll notice there's sections to every lesson. So you might have a lesson like on teaching actions, and then that lesson will have different sections, and the sections are the operants. So you'll see mans, tacts, intervals, all of that kind of stuff.
Really worthwhile.
In each lesson.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back, and very short break, and we're going to come back with a question for Dr. Najdowski. So stick with us.
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to,
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them.
Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome.
Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these three words. There is hope.
Welcome back. We are here with Dr. Adel Najdowski. We call this segment Real Progress with Dr. Adel because we talk about how we get to progress with our kids. We've been talking about the verbal operants and about teaching language, and somebody has written in and said, my daughter's case is ASD and nonverbal. Is there a more effective way to teach her how to talk? I think this is a great question because when we already are at the place where children are saying things, this lesson that you were talking about with verbal operants makes a certain amount of sense, right? But if we don't have the child speaking yet, we have to back it up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I will say this, and you can say what you want to say too on this, but getting functional communication is the main thing first, right? I mean, we all want our kids to be able to talk, but functional communication is really super duper important, whether that means using a device or something in the beginning. I don't want parents to ever think that by saying we're going to use a device, it means that we're never going to get to the talking. Research has shown that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Some of our kids won't talk. That's the reality.
It is.
But it's first and foremost, if your child is nonverbal, it's most important to get functional communication on board, and then be working towards.
And as far as functional communication, there's the Picture Exchange Communication System, PECS. It's very easy to use, and it starts right off with functional communication of helping the child to get their basic needs and wants met.
Yep.
And if you don't want to go with a picture card kind of communication system like that, normally the pictures are in a binder or something. A lot of people are now using iPads. There's something called Touch Chat and something else called Proloquo. Those are pretty popular and can be done on tablets and iPads. So you don't have to buy like a special device where it's all that does.
Yeah.
You know, you could use that same iPad or device for other things too.
Amazing.
And so definitely do that. And then whenever is it a son or a daughter? I don't know.
Daughter.
Daughter actually communicates that way. Let's say she presses a button that asks for an apple. Then you would say, apple, and then give her the apple.
So you're pairing your spoken language with it, and that's helping to build language.
Yeah, and a lot of these things actually speak.
Yes.
So like if she's handing a peck, it's not going to.
Right.
And so you need to say, apple, okay, and then give her an apple. And you're basically modeling the speech for her that goes along with it. But if it's one of these devices, it can say it. It can be programmed to say it. But even so, if it says apple, and then when you're giving her the apple, you should probably again say apple again when you're handing it over. It can't hurt anything to do that. And some research has shown that when you do this kind of stuff, it actually can increase language to be able to use these different systems. So I know a lot of people are afraid of using these because they think they're making a choice that their child is not going to speak and instead is going to communicate these ways.
Yes.
But research has shown that these actual devices and things have actually helped to facilitate and increase speech.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be afraid of that, and I think that every child deserves to be heard and have a voice.
Yes.
So we have to do something for them. But there's also procedures you can do for kids who don't speak that might be helpful to getting them to speak as well.
Okay.
To explain why it works, it kind of helps to go back to when babies, when you're an infant, you're being held by your mother and she's talking to you a lot and singing to you and things like that, and you're having touch. And so you're getting this primary reinforcement that basically most humans are born to find reinforcing when their mothers are touching them and stuff.
Okay.
And that's being paired with the voice.
Right.
So then what that does is it conditions the voice to become a reinforcer in and of itself.
Okay.
And so then that's why little children start babbling and things like that. When they hear themselves talk, it's automatically reinforcing because it's a conditioned reinforcer from when mom would hold them and caress them and everything. But a kid with autism might not like to be held and be touched and do all those things. And so in reality, it never becomes a conditioned reinforcer.
Okay.
Speaking and such.
So that's where it starts to unravel.
So what we do is we recreate that whole thing, but in a way that it is reinforcing for them, and it's through a procedure called stimulus-stimulus pairing.
Okay.
So what you do is you take something that is reinforcing to the child, do a preference assessment, figure out what they really like, and then engage in sounds.
Which is going to be very individual for the child. So we can't just carte blanche say, oh, it'll be this, because it matters. It has to be something that child really likes.
Yeah.
And all children are different. Okay.
Yeah, so let's say they love bubbles. So then what you would do is you would get bubbles out, and you would make a sound. And it's good if the sound is an approximation of like the word. So you might go bah.
Okay.
And then while you do bah, then you blow a bubble. So you basically are pairing the reinforcer, the bubbles, with the sound bah. Okay. And you're conditioning that sound bah as possibly becoming a reinforcer in and of itself when it's heard.
Okay.
Okay, so what happens then is suddenly now kids start making sounds. And it's not under the control of an instruction. It's just that sounds themselves have now become automatically reinforcing, just like it does with the babies. And so then as soon as they start making any babbling or any sounds, reinforce it.
Yeah.
By giving them a reinforcer right after they do it. And then once you can get reliably they're making lots of sounds, then you can start working more on trying to get it under the control of an instruction.
Okay.
So then you might move into something more like say ba, and then when they say ba, then give them the reinforcer. Whereas in the beginning, you're going ba and giving the reinforcer automatically right when you're saying ba.
Okay.
Later, once they're making sounds, you say ba. If they imitate you, then they get the reinforcer.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So now we're reinforcing that they have to speak in order to get it.
All right. And then from there, you start to shape up
The sounds.
what the utterances are so
Yeah.
that they start to sound like words.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain it quite that way. That's really cool.
Isn't it
I mean,
cool?
I've certainly seen the therapist doing the thing with the bubbles. They did that in my house and doing the sound. I just didn't get that that's what was happening.
Was Jem speaking when they started?
He had like 5 words that, because he had been speaking in sentences before he started to regress. He had like 5 words, but they weren't being used conversationally. He might like go and say it to the wall and have no idea of what the word meant and wasn't requesting anything. But he you know, and he would make lots of noises. He was constantly, he would go as if he was talking, but that's what it was. He would take 2 dolls and go and say to me, but not meaning to talk. It was like he had seen other people's mouths moving, and that's what it was. So it was disturbing.
Yeah. Okay.
But it very quickly, through the things that they did, and I mean very quickly, turned into words. It was fascinating.
Initially sounds probably, and then maybe like chains of blends. So, you know, like ba and then, or ma and then ma, you know, stuff like that. I mean, it's a slow process, but once they get the fact that, oh, when you say blank, if I do my best to try to imitate that, I'm getting this thing I really like, they just do it.
That
and
was so clear
it might not
to
be
him.
the most perfect thing, but we use differential reinforcement and we reinforce attempts and things like that. And then over time, we shape it into something that we require to be a little bit more articulated.
Which was so clear. And now he's a magpie. He's a magpie who can talk to anyone about pretty much anything. He cracks me up right now. So just know that there is hope. All kids are going to be different, and they're going to learn at different rates, right? But there is hope, and fascinating thing to hear how you put it together. I thank you so much for being here. We've missed you so much in the last couple of weeks, and thrilled.
It's been fun to be back.
It's really great to have you here. And remember that you can continue to write in questions for Dr. Najdowski throughout the week. If you're watching the recorded version of this, send in questions, because we have her back on a regular basis, usually every Thursday, and then we can ask her your question when she's back here. We are going to take a break now and go to the A Word. This is the ongoing documentary that's being made at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. And this is an amazing week where you get to see what's happening for him, how he's learning, and how well he's been reinforced. Watch how in tuned he is and how much he wants to please the therapist, because everything that's happening is good. Take a look. This is the A Word.
Jack Riley. Jack Riley, say hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy. Turn and look at me when you say hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy. Yeah. Good try.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody.
How are things?
They're good.
Yeah.
He's doing great. He had an incident.
What are you gonna
4th of July, we were out swimming with
What do you wanna play
another
with?
family out there, and he pushed a little girl in the pool, little 3-year-old.
Was he playing or?
Well, yeah, she was jumping in, and there was the steps, and her dad was watching. She jumped in and sort of paddled to the steps, and she kept doing it. And he was laughing, and she was laughing, and then he just helped her. So it wasn't malicious. But,
yeah, he wasn't angry. I think it was.
And they did it again though, after we so we took him in.
More than like 5 minutes, and make note of it.
You want a cracker? We'll come and get it.
There are 2 skills being displayed by Jack Riley right now. One is that he made eye contact, and the other is independently requesting an item without any prompting. These are both skills that he and his parents and therapists have been working on.
Can you say, I want cracker?
I want cracker.
Can you say, I want cracker?
Cheryl is prompting Jack Riley to use more than one word for his requests to build on his vocal skills. When Jack Riley began services 3 months ago, he was non-vocal with very little verbal skills. To be verbal is to communicate, whether it's with a gesture or signing are using pictures, for example. To be vocal is to communicate with audible words.
So if you had to pick maybe like your top 3 things to work on like when you're out in the community.
Trying to figure out what will make him compliant, you know, in public when there's a lot of people. He kind of took off twice for the street.
It's inconsistent enough that you can't count on it. There's days that are great and days where he does one of the.
Or he'll say go.
And then, yeah, go. He says stop and he says go and starts up again.
Okay. Him staying with us, him even just walking hand in hand without, I'd say within fewer than 10 steps, he goes noodle and sits down.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an outing section in here. And then if you want whenever it works for you guys, at least if we can do it at least once a week. These guys go on an outing to wherever you guys normally go.
Just to start getting him used to that, because it seems, yeah, with the activity, everything changes a little bit from him. Just gets so excited, and that's when I think most reason stops for him, and most of what he learns sort of goes out the window.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna spiral down. Spiral, spiral, spiral. Yay! Oh.
To me, he sounds like he's talking more than before. I don't know. That's what I observed. Huh? You're talking a whole lot today. Do you want to play with your trains? Yes. Good. Okay. Should we open? Open. Okay. Say open, please. Open. But the fact that he is actually communicating is really, really cool. And they're actually words instead of just, you know, utterances or, you know, gestures. Yeah, it's really incredible. Incredible. Say, let's go. Let's go. Okay. Choo choo. Come on. Wow, you did.
Right there, Jack Riley independently began playing with his train appropriately. What you see is what a typically developing kid would do, naturally. But kids with autism, most skills need to be taught until the behavior becomes natural. At this age, half of the ABA therapy occurs while the child is playing. The other half is in a structured environment and at the table, like you've seen in other episodes.
You want the train station?
Twice.
Station. That's a hard word. Station. Do you want it?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Wow, his yeses are very good. They are. Oh, and for NVI, we're also doing 2-step actions within play. So like basically whatever it is he's playing with, we just have to do 2-step actions, and he has to be able to imitate whatever we do. Do this. Choo choo. You do it. Say choo choo. Choo choo. Good job. Okay, let's put it on the track here. Do this. Choo choo. It's Riley's turn. Say choo choo. Yeah, here we go. So it's like little actions like that. Just, you know, putting the train on the track, making it go, putting items in the train, imitating even vocally, like what we say during play. Like here we go, choo choo. Just so this will help generalize when he goes to preschool, because other kids will, you know, be playing with trains too, and children naturally just imitate each other.
Right now, Jessica and Jack Riley are practicing using yes and no appropriately.
Do you want the shoe?
Yes.
Okay, here you go.
Yes.
Say no.
No.
Good. Stop. Watch your fingers. Do you want the shoe?
Yes.
Say no.
No.
Good. So do you want the shoe?
No.
Okay. Do you want the ball toy?
Yes.
Okay, here you go.
Bottle.
Here you go. All right, it's over. Okay, here. Do you want a diaper?
Yes. No.
No. Okay. Do you want a diaper?
No.
Okay. Do you want a ball toy?
No.
No. Do you want the cars?
No.
No. Do you want a Nemo car?
No.
Okay. Do you want bubbles?
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Puppy.
Pop, 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 pop. Boo puppy. Boo puppy. Hi, can you sit up though? Sit up. Stand up. Ready? Set.
We have new snacks for him because we started to incorporate gluten yesterday. So I've got some stuff.
Oh, okay,
that he hasn't had in a long time. Like we tried putting cut up bananas on his pancake plate last week, and not so well. He just threw them down. So I thought that kind of stuff would be easier now because he's been doing so well, and he's not. So we're still gonna have to have the battles, and I think we're just so happy to be done with the first battle, that we're sort of reluctant to start a new one, which is to start introducing new foods.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is now that we're taking him off of the GFCF stuff, we have more things to introduce him to.
Definitely.
And maybe he'll just get less anxious if we're giving him things that he used to love this stuff, but we took him off of it. He won't remember, but maybe it won't be such a big deal if some of the new foods he's getting are things that he's loving. Do you want to try cereal bar?
Ooh, yummy.
Are you looking funny?
Oh, Jack Riley.
Look better. Do you want to try cereal bar?
Cereal bar.
Cereal bar. Good talking.
Cereal bar.
Do you want to try?
Cereal bar.
Cereal bar.
Crystal clear. Cookie.
You want to try?
Cereal bar.
You want to try? I used to love these.
So yummy. I like them. You want cereal bar? I see. Mommy. Bobby. I want cereal bar.
Good job.
That was a good
That was
sentence.
very clear.
Yeah.
Slow. He sees it. So the more subtle we can go, the.
Cereal bar.
Do you want more?
More.
Can you say, I want more cereal bar?
Cereal bar.
I
want
more.
bar. Cereal bar.
Good job.
Cereal bar. Yeah. Cereal bar. It is a cereal. That's your new favorite word.
You have a new favorite, don't you?
Cereal bar. Who's here? Who's here?
Tell Daddy what you just ate.
What did you just eat? Did you eat something?
What did you eat, Jack? Tell Daddy. Goldfish.
Goldfish?
And what else did you have?
Anything else?
What else did you have?
What else did you eat, Jack?
Cereal bar.
What is it?
Good, that's answering a question. She asked if you could do that.
What is it?
Cereal bar.
A Nutri-Grain bar. So he
You
just
ate a
had-
Nutri-Grain bar?
And the fact that he turned to Daddy to say that too, that was big.
Just right there. Did you catch it on camera, Suzanne?
Yeah, I did.
That was really. And it was so
And
good.
he just answered questions about the past to you.
What?
He just answered questions about the past. Like he never.
That's true.
The doctor last week asked if he could do that.
Okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just right here. Right here.
The reason Cheryl is excited about Jack Riley answering Mike's question is that he was able to understand what he said and could recall what he had done in the past without any cues in front of him to remind him. Recalling something in your mind is a complex skill. This is a big leap. It means he grasped language.
That was the A Word. I want to encourage you to watch this entire series. You can find it on their very own YouTube page. And I'm always saying to people, use this as a tool. And for each of you, the tool is going to be somewhat different, right? If you are just starting ABA therapy and want to know, what is this going to look like in my home? What is the overriding arc of this? How are they going to get from this point to this point, doing the things that I see them doing? Great, great tool to put your mind at ease to say, oh, okay, this is how this connects to this, which connects to this. And eventually we end up all the way up here, right? I wished I'd had that when we were going through therapy. So much would have made so much more sense in the beginning. If you're somewhere along in the middle and you're, feeling like, okay, I don't know what we just have been through and I don't know where we're going, a great, great series to watch. And for therapists and for teachers and family members to watch and see, okay, this is what it's like from the family's perspective, invaluable. I mean, you just can't put a ticket cost on what it's worth. It's just absolutely amazing. It's uplifting too because you see this child making the progress. And I think sometimes for all of us, no matter how you're coming into the circle. If you're watching something every moment, it's that thing. People saw my kid last night, and I see him all the time, and every once in a while I'll look and I'll go, you just got a foot taller, didn't you? But I don't notice it incrementally every day. It might be when I put something out for him to wear that he hasn't worn in 6 months, and I go, okay, those are 4 inches too short. You know what I'm saying? I don't notice it though minute by minute. There are just different milestones when I'll notice it. But then we were with friends last night, and they saw him and they said, my gosh, he's just gotten so tall, right? It's the same way with when our kids learn too, that you celebrate the victories, small and large, but it's like stopping and realizing, okay, that we've gone from here to here in a set amount of time. Because you've seen the progress continually, a lot of times you don't notice how huge it is, how far you've actually gotten. And I think it's a great refresher to watch the A word and see that kind of thing. I can remember when there were certain birthday parties that we would go to every year that we wouldn't see certain people except at those birthday parties. And it was always fascinating to me, and it always bolstered me up when I would go to those, because I might be in a place where I'd think, gosh, we're just not making the progress I wish we were making. I was always in that worried spot. But I would go to the party and people would say to me, my goodness, what are you doing? Your child is doing so well. He just came up to me and said this, and I would think, oh geez, that's right, he couldn't do that the last time we were here. And it really put it in perspective for me. So because it adds up, man, it adds up. And if you ever doubt that it adds up, just look at the Grand Canyon. It adds up. You take an action and it continues to build and build and build. So check out the A word, participate by watching. You can comment. The family has its own Facebook page that you can ask them questions. Such a valuable resource. So I encourage you to definitely check that out. I'm just checking with Emily. Do we have our guest? We do not have our guest. He must have gotten held up, so we may not be having Tom Szabo with us today, which is a bummer. But if we don't, we'll try to book him in next week to talk about the hybrid master's program in professional behavior analysis at the Florida Institute of Technology. Right? We've got a bunch of questions that you guys have sent in, and a lot of these I want to save for Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who's going to be with us in just a minute. But I really want to thank those of you who were talking with us yesterday about Medicaid in Florida. I hope that you took the opportunity. Emily did post on Facebook those documents that will be interesting to you. And I know we had one follow-up question that came in about once you have gotten to a certain place, is there a way that you can go back and amend? So we're going to talk about all of that and ever so much more. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that I can answer really quick. Oh, I have a question. For the person who wrote in and said that they're looking for the group home in Rochester or Webster, I just need you to give me a little bit more information, because there's more than one Rochester, and it's by, I can think of two that are by towns that are Webster. So are you talking about Rochester, New York? You're talking about Rochester, Minnesota. So send me a little bit more information so that I can be helpful and useful. All right, we are going to take another break, just scanning through really quickly, but we have a bunch of questions for Dr. Tarbox. Somebody wrote, hi Shannon, I tried to write a question when Dr. Adel was on, but couldn't. I'm sorry. I was wondering, I just started with skills and have to admit a bit overwhelmed with questions. Is there a way to set parameters of what my son should know at 4? Great question. Because some of the questions seem way beyond that and where he is at. So I can know what he needs to know by 4 or 5, because he's just turned 4. Thank you. Okay, when you log on to skills, when you're first on, you get a set of questions that you answer in the beginning. And one of the first ones that you're asked is, what is the birth date of your child? And so go back into your account and look and see that you did that. I know, and it actually does a thing where it'll say to you, is this correct? But a lot of times when we're parents and we're filling that in, we don't feel the need to be exact, right? So make sure that you filled that out properly. If you fill the birth date out properly, it will not ask you questions pertaining to skills that are inappropriate. So go back and check that. If you have, and the date is correct, then know that it will ask you questions about the skill emergence emerging. So, you know, if your child, for instance, is 8, and one of the skills that begins to emerge with an 8-year-old is being able to repair a conversation. Don't feel bad about the fact that your 8-year-old on or off the spectrum doesn't do that really well. That's a skill that they will work on the rest of their lives, repairing a conversation when it isn't working with the other person. But the point is that it starts to emerge at 8. So they will ask questions about that of an 8-year-old. So, but first, especially because of what your concern is, please go back and check and make sure that you entered their birth date properly. If you didn't and it won't let you change it, make sure that you call for tech support, because they'll be able to change that for you quickly. And then it will automatically only filter out questions that are appropriate. Anything that emerges after age 4, it won't even ask you. So double check on that, and do me a favor and write me back and let me know if you had the birth date right, because I'm concerned about that. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with more of Autism Live.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. This month we're going to be making a mandala. Mandala, you ask? What's that? Well, in Sanskrit, that means circle, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Okay, the materials you'll be needing for this project are colored paper, scissors, and glue. I'm assuming a lot of you guys have made paper snowflakes before. Well, this is the same idea, except for we're going to be doing it with A, lots of color, and then B, we're going to be layering it up. So, first step we're going to have to do is fold a piece of paper, so when we cut it out, there's going to be a repeating pattern on it. So what you're going to do is fold it in half. And then you're going to fold it in half again. Make sure your lines are super creased, okay? And you're going to keep doing this. You're going to keep folding it in half as many times as you can possibly fold your paper. So now that this is folded in half as many times as I physically can fold it, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut out the excess. So here's the paper with all the excess cut off. If I open it up, boom, it's a circle, but it's missing all the wonderful patterns in here that repeat. So let's fold it back up, and what we're going to do now is we're going to cut the shapes in it, kind of like a snowflake. So get creative here. Remember, don't go all the way through, or else you're going to just cut in half. So have fun with it. Okay, since my paper is, as you saw earlier, double-sided with different colors, I'm going to cut out the center part and I'm going to flip it. I know that sounds crazy, but you'll see what I mean in a second. Alright, so let's open this up and take a look at it. Ooh, so you see that? I've got a perfect circle with a repeating pattern. Exactly what I wanted. Alright, so I cut out the center part that I cut out for my whole circle, and let's open it up. Look at that, it's another circle, but it's smaller. I'm going to take this and place this in the inside. So the basic idea of the mandala is you're going to take your construction paper, fold it like I just showed you, and then cut different sized triangles, which will turn into circles, so there'll be layers of colors with the pattern. And of course, while you're doing this, you can talk about colors and to have them work on their cutting skills. So now that I've cut out several snowflakes, I am going to start gluing them down on a piece of paper. Here's my mandala. It looks pretty finished, and it can be. But if you have an older kid and you really, really want to hone in on working on pattern making, you can take this little scrap pieces that you cut out and have them add to the pattern themselves. Well, I hope you and your child enjoyed this project and learned a lot from it. Until next time, guys, craft on.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We did find our guest. We were saying that we were going to have to reschedule, but we did find our guest. So we're so thrilled that Tom, and is it Szabo or Szabo?
Szabo, Szabo, Zibo, Zimbos, as it all works. Szabo is Hungarian, but...
It's a beautiful name, and we're thrilled to have you here with us because you are the assistant professor and site director of the hybrid master's program in professional behavior analysis at Florida Institute of Technology, otherwise known as as FIT. Now that's a mouthful. I had to write it down so that I could spit all of that out. What does it mean?
You did much better than I could ever do.
I don't think so.
And we also sometimes call it Florida Tech. So some people call it Florida Tech, some people call it Florida Institute of Technology.
Good to know.
So here's the deal. This is a master's program in professional behavior analysis. In other words, we'll give some emphasis to conceptual issues. We'll give some emphasis on experimental analysis of human behavior, but largely only in the context of what you do when you're working with kids and when you're working with families and when you're working within the context that you work in as a professional behavior analyst.
Okay, so is it geared specifically toward autism or towards behavior?
That's a great question. It actually is geared to the needs of the company that we contract with.
Okay.
So this is a program, it's called a hybrid master's program. The first portion of the classes that a student takes are taken online. The second portion of the classes, and this is where I come in because I teach the second portion of the classes, are taught in person by a board-certified behavior analyst who's also a PhD, and in the context of the work that you do. So, FIT has a relationship with CARD.
Okay.
We teach CARD professionals who are en route to becoming board-certified behavior analysts, and we teach them through my presence within the company. I immerse myself within the culture of the company. I know exactly what every single person who works at CARD knows, doesn't know, would like to know, really doesn't want to know. All of that stuff I build in to the courses and the practicum assignments that I do. So there's two parts. There's coursework and there's intensive practicum.
Okay. And so I imagine there are other organizations besides CARD that you work with as well.
We're starting to.
Okay.
The arrangement that we have with CARD is the very first of the hybrid master's programs in professional behavior analysis. So we're creating this model from a blank stone and chiseling away as we go.
I really love this because when my son was going through therapy, we had a vast array of therapists who would come in that were at different places in their education. And, some of them were getting their master's degrees, some were getting PhDs, and they were talking about the frustration of being at CARD and having access to top-level experts and hearing all these amazing things about autism and what could be accomplished, but they were going to universities and going into coursework where they knew more than their teachers. Right? And it was an exercise in frustration for them, and they were hearing some pretty old and antiquated things and some places where they were saying, well, you just can't do this with a child. And they knew they had been in somebody's home earlier that day and seen that you could do that with a child and get to that progress. So I love the idea that people who are working at that level can come to your program and get more education.
Yeah, that's cool. You know, I'm kind of unique in that I've kind of split my career between actually doing applied work as a clinician and also being a researcher. So I'm interested in both aspects of it, and I love rolling up my sleeves, getting my hands dirty, wearing a T-shirt, and doing what I have to do. And then having a spare set of clothing in my car so that I can come into the boardroom and make a presentation and.
Very cool. But in the other place, you can be rolling on the floor with the kids, getting something accomplished.
That's what the T-shirt in my car is for.
I love it. So if somebody's interested, and we were talking a little bit before the break about the fact that more and more parents are saying, hey, if I need to learn this, and I really need to immerse myself in this world of ABA and really understand it, I want to get a degree in it. I want to be able to understand it. I want to be able to work in this field. I want to take what I've done with my child. I want to be the best I can be with my child, and then I want to take what I've learned and be able to help other kids. I would think this would be a great program for them. So how would they find out more information?
Easy enough to contact me. I'm here at CARD. I'm here in Southern California, so I'm one person that you can contact. And should I just say what my contact information is?
You absolutely can.
Easiest way to contact me is by email, tszabo@fit.edu. Okay. And I think, Shannon, I'll just leave you with contact information for me. And Jose Martinez Diaz is our Associate Dean and Director of the program in Florida Tech.
Okay.
And
I assume they have a website?
Yeah, you can also go online to the FIT website and look for the Hybrid Master's Program in Professional Behavior Analysis.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
We'll have to get you back on the show. You have a lot of things that you could be talking about with us, so we'll have to book you to come back in and talk about some of those things.
Love to come back. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox for you. He's back, and I know you have a bunch of questions for him, so stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle, and without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. We underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm grinning like an idiot because I'm so thrilled. Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is here in the studio with us. And we call this Science Beat with Dr. Tarbox because you help us to understand the science component of things, the research component of things. But we have to stop for just a second and say welcome back just through different circumstances. It's been a couple of weeks. We've missed you terribly. I've missed you terribly. Thrilled to have you here. For those of you who haven't seen Dr. Tarbox before, he is the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. He's also the director of the Autism Research Group, and he's just somebody who has a beautiful mind and talks to parents in a way that we get it. So you're invaluable to us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Love always to end the week with you because it gets me in the right headset for being able to get through all the things we get through over the weekend and get to the good spaces. I quote you all the time when you're not here. So.
I quote you too.
Oh dear, that's scary. Uh-oh. I think they're different kinds of quotes. That's what I'm afraid of. But in any case, I wanted to start out, I know you guys have a bunch of questions and I'm going to get to as many of them as possible, but I do want to talk a little bit about something called the Sally Ann test.
Sure.
For those of you who haven't heard about it, it's very enlightening when you hear about it. And for those of you who have heard about it, I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important in the field of autism to understand what it's getting at.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, tell us.
Okay, so the Sally Ann task is basically, it's a task that tests a child's ability to understand other people's beliefs and understand other people's false beliefs and understand how true beliefs and false beliefs are connected to one's sensory experience. So what you've seen, you know because you saw it, or what you heard, you're aware of because you heard it, right? And so if you weren't aware of something, or if you didn't see or hear something, then you don't know it, right? So then your knowledge is going to be different than if you were there to witness it, okay?
Yeah.
All of this stuff sort of sounds like common sense to you and me, but it turns out, just like everything else, perspective taking, or the ability to understand other people's minds, their beliefs, attributions, perceptions, all of that ability, perspective taking, is something that's learned during our lifetime as children growing up and being socialized, and it's something that's not learned for a lot of folks on the spectrum unless it's directly taught. So it's just one of many skill areas that are very important to work on for individuals on the spectrum if they're having a difficult time developing those skills on their own.
Okay, so what does it actually do?
Okay, the test itself?
The test itself.
Okay. All right, so what they do is they take, there's different versions. There's a comic version, there's a cartoon version, or you can do it with dolls. I think the traditional way is to do it with dolls. And so you get two dolls, one is Sally, one is Ann, okay? And you have a ball that Sally's playing with, and then you have a basket, and you have a box, okay?
Right.
And so the two dolls are playing, with the ball, and then Sally places her ball in the box, and then says, I'm going to go, go away for a while. And she goes away for a while. Now I'm embarrassing myself.
It's okay. We've all played this way. I'm a Barbie fan from way back when. We've all done this. It's all good.
Okay. So Sally hides her ball and then walks away. And she's not present anymore.
Okay.
Now Ann takes the ball and hides it in the other location.
Okay.
Now Sally comes back. All right. Now I'm the tester. You're the child with autism.
Right.
Okay? So then I ask you, where is Sally going to look for her ball?
Okay.
Okay, so if you have an accurate understanding of Sally's mental states, then you're going to indicate that she's going to look for the ball where she put it.
Yeah,
right?
where she left it.
Where she left it, because that's all she saw, right? But if you don't understand that the doll's perspective is different from your own, because you witnessed the ball get moved, right? The doll did not. If you don't understand that your perspective is different, then you may actually say that the doll is going to do something based on your perspective. In other words, the doll's actually going to know that the ball was moved, even though the doll wasn't there to see it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
you know where the ball is, but you have to filter it through what are the Sally's circumstances?
Exactly.
What could she know?
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so it turns out that a lot of folks on the spectrum, even with no problem with IQ and pretty good language, actually fail the test, and because they don't understand the difference between their perspective and other people's perspective. So if they see something and they know it, they think other people do too. So there's lots of real common everyday examples of this. For example, if you're talking to someone on the phone and you got a new toy that you really love, you might say, "Hey, look at this! Isn't it cool?" Right?
Yeah.
But the person on the phone can't see it, right? All they can do is hear you. Or you might not give someone else appropriate background information.
Right.
So let's say you're starting a conversation with your friend, right? And you might just jump right into the middle of the conversation. Like, for example, you might say something like, And then we, ate some hamburgers and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Without saying, I was hanging out with my friend, we went to a restaurant, et cetera,
Yes.
right? Because you don't understand that your friend doesn't have the background information. Your friend's knowledge is different from your own.
Yeah. And I think what was fascinating to me the first time I heard about this was that in the original study, and correct me because you know much more about this than I do, but that there were 3 groups. There were a group of kids who were neurotypical, there were a group of kids who were on the autism spectrum, and there were a group of kids who had Down syndrome or other issues. And that what was fascinating to me, and they were all of a certain age, like 4 or 5, where they should begin to understand somebody else's perspective.
I don't remember the exact age, but
I don't
it was
either.
it was an age where in typical development kids can understand this stuff. Yeah.
And that overwhelmingly the neurotypical kids answered the question to the Sally Ann task correctly. They understood Sally's perspective was different than theirs, which we would expect that.
Sure.
We would go, and that I was like, yeah, okay, so whatever, right? And that the kids with autism didn't get it.
Right.
This did not surprise me either.
Right.
But what got me, and I went, okay, this is interesting, is that the kids with Down syndrome also got it correct overwhelmingly.
Right, yeah.
That it
Very
really,
interesting.
for me, it was like, well, this is part, we're always talking about the missing puzzle piece. We're trying to put the puzzle pieces of autism together, and I went, here's one of the puzzle pieces. This is where our kids are different. This is a whole in their understanding of the world and how they relate to the world. This is a, this is a real issue that we need to combat. Now, when I found that out, now I got all excited as a parent about, so how do we attack that? What I found was that there weren't a whole lot of people who were talking about how to attack that.
Yeah, not very many. Not very many at all.
But you are.
So we've been doing research on this for a while, and CARD has been actually offering treatment and teaching these perspective-taking skills for years. It's part of the reason why I came to work here, actually, almost 10 years ago, was because that clinical work was already ongoing, and so I was excited about doing research on it. And so, basically, the idea is you treat it just like any other skill. It is a major missing puzzle piece in autism. Some people make a little bit too much of it. For example, the Theory of Mind research camp, some of them actually say that it's the cause of autism, that a missing mechanism, theory of mind mechanism in the brain is like the core causal mechanism that causes autism to begin with. I think that's definitely making too much of it.
Okay.
I think that the right way to treat it is just another really important skill that a lot of kids on the spectrum are lacking. And so just like any other skill, if the kid needs it and it's important, you better figure out how to teach it, right? But it is kind of one of the core deficits of autism because it's part of the whole issue of being socially connected. Right? And that's the defining feature of autism is socially connected, social understanding. Perspective taking is all about being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So it's kind of the most advanced form of social behavior, right? So like simpler social behavior might just be eye contact, right? Or saying hi when someone says hi to you. But as you get older, in typical development, you get more and more subtle and more advanced forms of social behavior. And perspective taking is probably the most advanced form.
And honestly, when I talk to parents about what are the things, once we get rid of all of the, the behavior that comes with not being able to communicate, then the things that parents are usually most concerned about are the things that present a big obstacle to having relationships.
Right, exactly right.
Friends and having relationships with parents. And this, to me, is one of the big puzzle pieces is missing because if you don't understand somebody else's perspective, you won't be empathetic.
Right, exactly.
And then people are not reinforced by being around you when you don't take their perspective.
That's exactly
so I think it's awesome that you don't minimize this and that you don't make it everything, but it's one of the skills that you make core to teach our kids. And I mean, I've been a part of that. There are still places, because my son is 10, he's still a work in progress, there are still places where he's piecing these things together, but like all the other 10-year-old boys.
Right, absolutely. And I'm here to tell you that plenty of typically developing adults have really bad perspective-taking skills too, right? So if you have a friend or a colleague who never lets you talk in a conversation, they're just talking the entire time. Everyone else in the conversation is getting bored, twiddling their thumbs, and they don't even notice, right? That's the same basic issue. You don't understand that other people have different mental states than you. Like someone else is feeling bored or they're feeling irritated, right? While you're feeling really interested and really excited about your topic of your conversation, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's something. Honestly, it's something that all of us could work on. And actually, there's some good research to show that it's an important component of just overall sort of psychological well-being and psychological flexibility. The ability to take someone else's shoes or put yourself in someone else's shoes basically just helps with everything you do when you're interacting with other people.
So for people who are watching and they say, okay, great, I'm in, I want to be working on these kinds of things. If they've got an ABA provider already, if they're working with CARD, then probably these programs are these lessons are part of your program, and you can ask your supervisor about that. If you are working with an ABA provider that isn't CARD and you haven't had these kinds of things, they can encourage their ABA provider to find these lessons and skills, correct?
Absolutely, yep.
And if you are not yet working with an ABA provider, of course, we really want to encourage you to do that. But until you can get skills and start working on them yourself, which areas will we find these lessons in
It's the
skills?
whole cognition curriculum.
Okay.
So skills has the 8 curricula, right?
Right.
And cognition, we called it that because that's what everyone else in the world calls it. But it's perspective taking.
Okay.
And that whole curriculum is just about that, starting with the simplest forms of perspective taking, advancing all the way up to the most subtle and most complex and most advanced forms of perspective taking. And other great resources out there is you can just Google perspective taking or theory of mind, and there are literally hundreds of books out there.
Okay.
Now, those are all great resources of information on what good perspective taking would look like.
Right.
They're not actually good resources of information on how to fix the problem.
Right.
Because most people who do research on perspective taking spend all of their time describing what perspective taking is supposed to look like and demonstrating that people with autism can't do it. But they don't really do very much treatment research, unfortunately. But still, there's a lot of great books out there. They call it things like mind reading and stuff like that. But you have to take it with a grain of salt because it's not telling you how to fix it. It's just telling you, here's all the skills you might want to consider having your ABA provider work on with your child.
But you can find all of those lessons and skills. Go to skillsforautism.com. Amazing topic. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to start asking some of the questions that you guys have been writing in to Dr. Tarbox, so stick with us.
Hi, welcome to Camp Discovery, a free-to-play suite of fun, interactive learning games for kids 2 and up, designed by experts in autism. Camp Discovery will open your early learner to a world of new skills, shapes, numbers, colors, locations, emotions, and more. Let's get started.
Please choose a level.
Objects. First, Camp Discovery's Intelligent Preference Assessment determines your child's preferred reward for choosing correctly. Okay, got it. Let's play. Camp Discovery creates a motivating learning environment for your child by minimizing incorrect responses and maximizing successful ones.
Find the shoes.
Respond correctly and your child is rewarded with their favorite animations.
You did it.
Responding correctly, and our unique prompting system guides your child to the correct answer by making it the largest choice.
That's not it. Try again. Way to go.
Continue to answer correctly, and the size gradually reduces until the child makes the correct choice independently.
You win.
Success! Rewards motivate learning. Complete a round, and your child is rewarded with a fun mini-game. Track your child's progress with easy-to-read graphs. Multiple settings options allow you to customize Camp Discovery to your child's unique needs. All this in one single app, the Camp Discovery app, available for free on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon Store.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We want to start to very quickly address some of the questions that you guys have been writing in for Dr. Tarbox. The first one, hi Shannon and Dr. J. I like that, Dr. J.
Dr. J, okay.
How do I push for a one-on-one aid for my son's pre-K program? I want him to go to an inclusion program through school district, but because of his difficulty with staying on task and attention, he will probably need an aid for the larger inclusion classroom. This classroom has 18 kids, and his current class is only 7 kids. How do I push for an aid? And I love this question. It's so great. How do I push for an aid without making him seem to need a more restrictive setting? And am I allowed legally to only send him for half of a day? I live in Florida, Palm Beach County. They don't provide ABA in schools, so I want him to come home half a day and get his hours of ABA, and thank you for your help. We get a lot of parents writing in and asking about what do I do in this pre-K year? year, right? And we've had these questions before for you. I love that this parent is very clear on what they want, and that they want for him to go and have that social experience, but they want him to come home. I fully support that. I think
absolutely,
and you totally have the legal right to do that. Before your child is in kindergarten, you can decide how often. Pre-K, it's totally up to you. And we were talking about this during the break. Even once it gets to kindergarten, you can postpone for a year. I think it's right around the age when your children are 6 that you have to make a decision. Are they going to school or are you homeschooling them? But up until then, you have a whole lot of leeway. But in terms, Dr. Tarbox, of this making the argument for the aid, and making it seem, because you have to make the argument that they've got enough issues that they require the aid, but not enough issues that they can't be in the inclusion classroom. What's the argument here?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a tough one, right? I mean, and I'm not sure that really making the appropriate argument in an IEP setting is my area of expertise, but I guess what I always come back to, and advice that I always receive from advocates, is that it's about showing that this is an appropriate education for my child, and that nothing else is. So a more restrictive placement is not an appropriate placement for my child, because my child is able to function in these settings with some support, right? But totally unsupported placement in this placement is also not an appropriate education for my child, because he does have some attention difficulties, right? So I think it's just about making that case. I mean, easier said than done, right? Another thing that she might note is that all of the major outcome studies on ABA for kids with autism start with intensive home or center-based treatment, and then gradually transition to school-based treatment with an aid providing support so that the transition is successful. So as far as I know, there's no studies that have ever shown that just an all or nothing transition from ABA to public school without support is going to work.
Okay, so
it's always gradual.
Is there a study that we can tell her, or
all of the major outcome studies? So even the original Lovaas study describes that. Sallows and Grotner describes that. The Howard 2005 study describes that. They basically all talk about that. It's usually only one paragraph, or maybe even less than a paragraph, hidden in the article somewhere. But it basically describes the overall progression of treatment from very intensive in controlled settings to much less intensive and eventually fading out completely in totally mainstream settings. But it's not just black and white. There's a lot of gray. In fact, most of the, if a kid's in treatment for 2 or 3 years, probably 2.5 of those years is gray, right? Very little of it is purely black or white.
Okay, so if you want access to those studies, you can write to us and we can help connect you to those studies always, okay? And I also want to say that, I love that you brought up the word appropriate, because that's the key to everything. Legally, what you're entitled to is a free, appropriate public education. So when you're talking to them, you never want to say about, well, this is what would be best.
Right. They're not legally required to give your child what's best.
Which tears my ticket, but let's not even go there, right? I have an IEP tomorrow for my son. But, so drill that word appropriate, and know that further on in that sentence, it is in the least restrictive environment. And they are not allowed to refuse your child something based on funds. So I think sometimes it's better to make a very small thing. You make the statement, make sure you have a tape recorder whirring when you say this, but what you think is appropriate is for your child to be included, and that with an aid for support, and you have your little studies to back up, say as little as possible, but then if they are saying no, that you get it on tape recorder asking them why.
Right, that's a great point.
What possible reason could they say no? If they haven't tried it yet, they don't know if your child will be successful. The reason is that they don't want to pay for it. Now, here's the good part, is that you're asking that it only be for a half day. So they might go for it.
Yeah, they might. And it's fine also to say, they might say something like, well, we don't even know if it's going to work, or we don't even know if it's going to be necessary. Maybe he'll do fine without it. Maybe we should try without it first. And you could say, yeah, we don't know, so let's try it and collect some data, and we can consider the first 6 months or the first semester sort of a trial period, and we can base it on the data.
Right, and if they're saying, well, let's try it without and see how he does, then what you do, you say, well, I have this study, and this study that say that all these studies say that the successful outcome came from, so that would seem appropriate, wouldn't it? Do you have any studies that can show me that there has ever been something that happened, and they won't, because there aren't any, so they can't prove that theirs is appropriate. And you try to be as nice as possible,
Sure, yeah.
and calm, cool, and collected, but that you have your you-know-what together. But ask them when they, I always love to put it back and say, well, here's what I have that's shown to be effective. What do you have? And then get real silent and still. I always try to, my husband always calls it the crickets. Wait for the crickets. Cricket, because it will get very silent in the room because they don't have anything on their side. They just don't.
Right.
It's the reality. And sometimes they don't know it, that they don't. But the lawyers, when they go back to their lawyers, will say, you don't have anything to show that it, And then it starts costing them money. So then, try that. Write us back. Let us know what happens with that. Now, I want to go to a question a little bit further back. We had a lot of questions about Medicaid in Florida yesterday. And I do want to say to the person who wrote it in and said that you think that you already signed and agreed. And I'd like a little bit of your input on this as well, Dr. Tarbox. Things change from time to time. And if you have somebody who says your child needs 30 hours of ABA, and somebody else comes along and says, no, your child only needs 15. That doesn't eradicate the fact the person said 30. And even if you signed a paper that said, okay, I agree to get 15 hours, in every case, whether it's Medicaid or you're with any state, you can always ask to have a case reevaluated and reopened. It sometimes is more difficult.
Yeah, I'm not a legal expert, but as far as I know, that's correct. There's always an appeal process or a reassessment process.
Yeah, and they'll make it sound as though if you signed off that you're done, you're never done. You're never done. There's always more that you can do. So, because she says, now I want to go back and fight to get closer to 40 hours.
Yeah, good for her.
And the child is 4. That's
well within the early intensive intervention window.
Yeah. And we've said that Florida, for our Florida friends that are there, CARD is coming. We think the paperwork is just about to be hot off the press, that they'll be able to do CARD with Medicaid in Florida. So hang on, it's coming. Okay, want to go up to a question. And I'm scrolling through all these things to find it. We're going to take a short break so that I can find it, because I know there was here it is. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Tarbox. I was wondering what I could do to help my 4-year-old son. He spurts where he has spurts where he's very engaged and talkative and responsive, and then I see him occasionally at school and it seems as if he's there physically but not mentally and not participating. He also during these days when he's like other people. Let me see. He also, during these days when he is like this, other people ask him things and it's like he is deaf. What can I do to help? There's such a roller coaster where he does great and then not so great. And thanks, I love your show and you keep me hope for my child.
Oh, that's really good feedback. We'd love to hear that.
So, when it's like this.
Right.
And not responsive.
So, what I'm always looking for is some kind of cause, right? Some kind of variable out there in the environment, or something happening at school, something in the teacher's behavior, the aide's behavior, the parent's behavior, or something happening at home. It could be sleep. If your child has sleep troubles and he cycles back and forth with good sleep, bad sleep, that's going to have a huge impact. I mean, we know that sleep deprivation decreases attention and decreases responsiveness. It's a slam dunk. So I would look at that first. Things like diet. If he has a consistent diet, make sure that it's well-rounded, not too much junk food. I know that's easier said than done, but keeping a healthy, consistent diet. Things like even bowel movements. A lot of kids on the spectrum have real major issues with that, where they'll cycle between not going for a long time and then going a whole bunch all at once.
Yeah.
All of those things are basically going to make you feel like garbage. And when you feel like garbage, you're going to pay attention less. I mean, and it's the same for me and you. It has nothing to do with autism, really. It's the same for all of us. Just so happens that kids on the spectrum have an even tougher time paying attention, many of them. And so if they're sick, it's going to make it even harder. So I would definitely look at all of those things. So sleep, just basic nutrition, and any other medical stuff going on. And then also a major thing that a lot of parents experiment with, and of course I don't know anything about this particular case, but a major thing that a lot of parents experiment with is different types of vitamin supplements and different types of medications. And if you're going to do that, that's fine. Make sure you do it with a doctor and or a nutritionist. And you're not, and if you are kind of being a lone ranger and doing your own little experiments of putting your child on or off various supplements or various vitamins and things like that, that can affect how they feel. So that would be another major thing to look for, is if you're going to try something, first of all, my suggestion as a scientist is try stuff that's been proven to work first, right? But whatever you're going to try, make sure you're consistent and that you're stable. So that if you're going to try a new vitamin supplement, whether it's fish oil or something like that, which is good for your health anyways, regardless of whether you have autism, do it consistently. Like, stick with it for a week and don't change the amount, don't change the dose. And then that way you can see, is there a change in my son's attention or behavior or whatever it is. If there's no change, then you know it's probably not having an effect. If you do see a big change in your son's attention or behavior or sleep patterns, look at what you changed. If you changed any supplements or diets or anything like that, or especially medication, pharmacological treatments are huge that way. So if you Risperdal or any SSRIs or any of that kind of stuff, or ADHD medication, if you're changing any of that, that needs to be stable before you can know what's going on. So I mean, I don't know if maybe the mom has already tried all of this stuff, but those are kind of the usual suspects. Those are the first things that you'd want to look at. Go down the list, only change one thing at a time, right? So if you suspect it's a sleep issue, fix the sleep issue first and keep everything else the same, and then see if his attention improves.
Okay, so this just came up with a friend of mine, so I'm going to ask this question, and I don't know how much you know about this, but I know somebody who's about to go through testing because their child seems to have periods of times where he just blanks out. Okay. And so they're going to check to make sure that there's no absence seizures. I wasn't aware of this, but sometimes the kids can have very small, when I think about seizures, I think about, where they're trembling and doing all those things. But apparently sometimes there can be very small, minor seizures, and they just short out for a little while.
It looks like the person is just spacing out and not paying attention,
And so, but that's really intensive, getting that looked at. So do we recommend that they at least think about seeing a neurologist?
Absolutely. Can't hurt.
But it can't hurt. And they can tell you more, and they can look at the actual behavior and say, is this consistent with this or not, and tell you whether they think, because a lot of times what you have to do to find out if it is very low-level seizures is do a 24-hour, an EEG?
Sleep study, we have to go to the hospital and sleep there with the electrodes attached to your head.
Which, our kids just love. And it's hard for an adult who isn't on the spectrum to go through something like that and get some sleep when they wire you all up. But if you discover that is what it is, then, it's important to know.
Right. Okay. And keep in mind, when you take your child to the medical doctor, and indeed when you take yourself to the medical doctor, it's their job to offer you treatment choices. And oftentimes they're going to offer you things basically just to make you feel better, right? Where if they really leveled with you, they would tell you, you don't really need this, but I just feel like I have to offer you something. So when they offer you treatment choices or test choices, you don't have to do what they say, right? It's an opportunity for you to think very carefully, what are the potential side effects of this? How much is it going to cost? How much time is it going to take? How upsetting is it going to be and challenging is it going to be for my child and my family? And what evidence is there that we're actually onto something, that this could actually be something that my child needs, as opposed to, well, this is what the doctor kind of offers everybody who comes through the door.
I think it's so important, and thank you so much for saying that, because, we go to our doctors for answers, and it's important for us to realize that we're still empowered in that process.
That's
and that they, I do think in our culture, doctors are elevated to this status, and they're taught in medical school how to carry themselves as if they know everything. And that the culture is, if you have you're a doctor, and so we look up to you and we ask you all kinds of questions, and I do have an expectation that you know everything.
Which is definitely false.
You can't possibly know everything. I know that at some level, but I always tell the example of when I was pregnant with my son, and I'm allergic to wheat. I can't eat wheat. And I had to go into the hospital. I had some stuff going on. They had to check it all out. And they said they were going to keep me overnight for observation. I said, okay, to my husband, you're going to have to go get me something to eat. And the doctor in the emergency room said to me, it's okay, we have a cafeteria here, we can get you something. And I said, I'm allergic to wheat. I have, he'll have to run down to the health food store and get something. And she goes, we have stuff, we can get you a sandwich. And this was well before the gluten-free generation. And I said, I'm just going to doubt that you have bread that isn't made with wheat. And she said, we have white bread. And my husband said to her, and what do you think white bread is made out of? White? right? But it's always whenever we're talking about doctors don't know everything.
Right, sure.
We always talk about the white bread. What is white bread made out of? Because it's important to remember that they are people and they can't possibly, this was a person who was really good at a whole bunch of things, not nutrition.
Right. That's right. That's very true.
So,
and the truth about modern medicine is it's not like they know the cause of everything and they know the fix of everything.
Right.
In fact, most things they don't know the cause of and they don't know the exact fix. And so it's always a matter of weighing your choices. It's never just, here's your disease, or very rarely is it, here's your disorder, here's your treatment. Okay. It's much more often, here's a whole bunch of clues as to what your disorder might be, right? And here's several different treatment options. None of them are a slam dunk, and all of them have their pros and cons.
Okay.
And so that's almost always the case. I mean, even when you go in with an ear infection, until they really know it's an ear infection, they're not 100% sure it's that. It could be viral still, even in something as simple as that. So.
And I apologize because I wanted to squeeze one more question in, and I don't think we have time. Do we have time, Emily? We have 2.5 minutes. We're going to talk right to the end.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, my 4-year-old nephew was diagnosed with more of a severe autism. He's nonverbal, not potty trained, but one thing I do notice is that he gets jealous if another child sits next to one of his parents. He goes and sits next to the parent when this happens and even tries to push the other child or sit on top of the child. I think that this is a very good skill to have, especially when most of the day he spends it in his own world. What do you think? Maybe the doctor was wrong about him being so severe, and thanks in advance.
Okay. And what did she say what the age was?
4.
Okay, 4 and nonverbal and
not potty trained yet.
Mm-hmm. So nonverbal at 4 is going to be pretty severe.
Okay.
If we're not seeing any real attempts to communicate or any emergence of language by 4, I'd say that's fairly severe.
But that doesn't mean that there aren't skills that can be built upon. That's the thing. I think when we hear severe, we hear game over. And it isn't that. It isn't that at all. So clearly, there is a place where he's connecting with his environment and letting himself, he is attempting to communicate. And that can be built upon.
And in that moment, something that someone else is doing matters a great deal to him.
That's social.
Which is really important. That's called social. Right, exactly. So that could definitely be a window in.
So that's something that needs to be built upon. And even when we say severe, I just want us all to remember that that doesn't mean there's no hope. It doesn't mean that there's no progress that can be made. It means that it's going to be harder.
Yeah, just means you have a tougher road to walk. That's it. But there's always hope. Every single individual, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. Every single individual with autism I have ever met in my life and worked with has made significant progress in some area.
There we go.
Every single one.
And that's why we're here.
When they get effective treatment.
And it's got to be quality, effective treatment. That's really the key. You got to be working with the right people at the right amount.
Right, that's right.
Can't be doing it 5 hours a week. So I hope that we're out of time, but I hope that your 4-year-old nephew is getting that quality ABA. That's what he needs. And 40 hours a week.
That's correct.
That is the prescription at that age. Okay, we are totally out of time, but I thank you so much for being here. It's always such a pleasure to have you here. I thank all of you for being with us for yet another week. We're going to be back on Tuesday, and on Tuesday we have Dr. Travis Thompson is going to be here with us talking specifically about all the coding that happens with insurance and giving you the lowdown on how to code things, what to ask for so that your insurance company will know the code and you'll get it funded. This is huge. So thrilled to have him with us on Tuesday. And then we got a really exciting week for you coming up next week. So you won't want to miss that. I think we're completely out of time, although I'm not hearing Emily. So I'm going to say goodbye, but please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.